Hello, and welcome to episode 20 of Modern Media Review. I'm Robin Gibson.
And I'm Sean Gollogly.
And we're going to plug our services, if you could call them services, as usual. You can listen to our podcast on YouTube, and you can subscribe on YouTube. You can also get them on iTunes, Spotify. You can get them on a website, which is modernmediareview.com. And we're on Twitter and Facebook as well, if you're into that sort of thing. And it's 11 a.m, which...
Very early for you, Robin.
Well, it's just been one of my ambitions to put
to
time
get up
checks
that early.
in. No, to put time checks into the podcast. I've been up since 9 a.m.
If in doubt, go to a time check.
Is that why there's so many of them?
Yeah, you've got nothing else to say.
I never knew that. I thought it was a sort of public service.
Like the speaking clock. Does that still exist?
I think it does, yeah. I'm pretty sure you can still dial it 1, 2, 3. But the reason I mentioned the time is that we're talking about Frankie Boyle and offensive comedy. And it's not the sort of time of day that I'd normally be thinking about offensive comedy. Offensive to some people, obviously. And to be honest, I don't often think about Frankie Boyle, but I was sitting down one night at a more appropriate time recently, and I saw that the best of Frankie Boyle's New World Order series was on. I thought, well, I always used to think of him as a bit of a Jerry Sadowitz light, but I'll give it another try.
Well, the thing about it is, I mean, obviously I watched the Best Up, the rap show, yeah? And I thought that what came across was that he was very smart.
You mean smartly dressed?
Yeah, very presentable.
He's got a three-piece suit now.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that what you're talking about?
Very shiny shoes. You know, like when your parents make snap judgments about doctors.
Yeah, he was very well turned out with a nice tie.
It normally helps if they're British.
It's better than saying, you know, it's thanks to a miracle that he's been cured or whatever. It's not a miracle, it's the complete opposite, isn't it? It's medical science and technical proficiency that cures people.
No, I think what they do is they sort of like shake branches over you and blow smoke against you, and sort of like by accident you're cured.
This is a bit of a time check, this interlude, isn't it? We have got other things to say. Anyway, what do you mean he was very smart?
Well, it wasn't just the self-loathing baiting of every sort of ethnicity or political point of view. He was talking about pluralism in journalism and media, which I thought was quite interesting. You know, when that guy from the former editor of The Scotsman was on.
Who?
Oh, you missed that. Sorry, because I was watching this on the iPlayer, and I enjoyed it so much that I ran through one that was about Scotland, the referendum on leaving.
Referendum. No, I didn't see that.
Which is brilliant, really. But the funny thing was, he said, but of course, this is only available on the iPlayer after the polls have closed, so it will have no impact whatsoever, which I thought was interesting, where they've sort of like pigeonholed him, either on the iPlayer or BBC Two.
I was pretty impressed with it. You know, I also thought he was smart, but I had noticed the three-piece suit. And I thought the format was it got a bit tired after a while, because it just had this huge, obviously because it was all crammed together from 6 episodes, it hit all these people like Sarah Pascoe and Richard Osman and people I've never heard, these sort of media types, you know, and it became a bit, you know, it's almost like a panel show then, but he did dive in with some great jokes, but even then, like, his best joke right at the start was the one about Brexit, saying it will never stop, will it? It's like you've jumped out of one of the towers in 9/11 and before you hit the ground someone opens a manhole cover, which is brilliant, but it's not really that shocking anymore, is it?
Well, I thought another brilliant line was about veganism.
Oh yeah, I loved that. Yeah.
Where he was saying, save the planet, we should all be vegans and all the rest of it. He said, never mind veganism. He said, what about cannibalism? Eat another person and you've wiped out. You know, it's 100% of your carbon print gone. You know, he said, better than that, eat a pilot.
Yeah, and all that was really good.
So what are you moaning about?
I'm not moaning. I'm just saying, like, the format itself became a bit tedious. I mean, once the other guests started talking, they were talking about hemorrhoids and bumholes and things. It was all just a bit typical. It reminded me of those shows that Jimmy Carr does, you know, where they kind of potty talk.
Yeah.
But overall, I was quite impressed. But I still
put it this way, Robin: it's better than having to sit through a Michael McIntyre show.
True. Yes. Which
is what you'll get on primetime TV.
Jerry Sadowitz does a whole kind of, when I've seen him, he's done a whole routine about how appalling McIntyre is, which is probably a bit of an easy target. But it is interesting that, as you said, it's sort of tucked away on BBC Two. I don't know, it suggests to me that there is no great New World Order, and I bet you, and I think he's said in interviews that he's sort of not censored, but he's definitely limited in what he's allowed to say. I know he gets away with a lot more swearing than people used to, but still kind of makes me think that this sort of comedy hasn't made it to the mainstream. Well, and will it ever?
Well, the problem is, and I was thinking about this whilst watching the BAFTAs the other night, which we were going to review, and then it was just so boring and mundane that it wasn't really worth it. And the number of accolades and awards that are heaped on this mediocre TV stuff that goes out, you know. For Christ's sake, Ant and Dec must have won the BAFTAs for the last 100 years, you know.
Well, it's did they win something?
Of course they won something. And the other one, whichever it was, who did the drunk driving and had to sort of disappear for a while, he won too, and I don't think he's been on telly for a year.
Well, I didn't watch it. I mean, it was so boring I didn't even watch it. Did Michael McIntyre win anything?
Probably. I was sort of tuning in and out of it.
You fall asleep, yeah.
But this is the problem with comedy, is that if you're going to put it on prime time, I'm guessing you have to sort of like revert to the median type of thing. Do you know what I mean? It can't be too far one way or too far the other, and you end up with this bland mediocrity.
I noticed on the iPlayer that when I went back to look at it again that it doesn't actually describe it as offensive comedy. What it says is Frankie makes a string of bold enough and outrageous statements. But does he? I mean, bold perhaps. How outrageous really is it? You know,
there was a brilliant one, and you should watch it. And if anyone's listening, go on to that Scottish referendum one, which is on the iPlayer, which is just absolutely brilliant. And they do a particularly easy target was they went round to this Rangers supporters club where there was this lad in an England shirt going, "Rule Britannia," singing it away, and "Take that, you fuckers."
That's Rangers fans for you,
Stick up
mate.
your ass, you fuckers.
That's Rangers fans for you.
But there's another aspect to comedy which I think is very important, and it's probably why I've got this sort of pet hatred of Michael McIntyre, is that he does sound horribly, a little bit like me, a bit middle class, whereas when you've got a Scottish accent, it comes across a lot better.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's just a coincidence that Sadowitz and Boyle are both Scottish. And I mean, Sadowitz really hates Boyle anyway. I mean, Jerry Sadowitz is my favourite comedian, and that's why I didn't like Frankie Boyle for quite a while, because I thought he just seemed like a bit of a, as I said, a Jerry Sadowitz light. And Sadowitz also had a few criticisms of Boyle in an interview I read where he sort of alleged, and Sadowitz's allegations are always worth taking seriously, because he did manage to identify Jimmy Sadowitz. He did manage to identify Jimmy Savile in 1987 as a paedophile. It's a shame that Sadowitz doesn't allow his stuff to be left on YouTube, but that one is actually back up there at the moment, that little clip.
Well, Jerry Sadowitz is a tough one, because I've been to see him live as well, and I get that he's very self-aware and hates everyone and hates himself more than anything.
He hates himself. That's the main thing. He absolutely hates himself. That is the point of it.
But some of the stuff he says, Robin, is pretty hard-hearing.
Hard-hearing?
You listen to it and you think, ooh, that's
yeah, but that's the idea, isn't it? Sometimes Frankie Boyle seems more someone perhaps because he's more famous and more mainstream in terms of his acceptance, that he's more of a position of power, whereas Sadowitz is a very powerless, raging sort of character.
Which I do like in many ways, but why doesn't he just try and be a bit more like one of Britain's greatest comedians, Rowan Atkinson, you know, pull a fucking inane, gurning face, you know?
Well, he tried it, didn't he? I mean, they gave, years ago when he was much harder to swear on TV and stuff, they gave him his own show on BBC Two, I think, called The Pallbearers Review, which was quite a good title in its day, but he wasn't really allowed to swear, and it was all a bit flat, and he never really came back to TV, apart from that series he did where he bailed people off if he didn't find them amusing, Sadowitz versus the People. You know, I don't think he wants to be mainstream. I just think he's the ultimate of doing this sort of thing.
The thing about Frankie Boyle being on BBC Two is, I guess he's only on BBC Two because they closed down BBC Three.
Probably, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That was shocking that some producer put a great tweet out when they
binned it off.
When they binned it off, saying it's like a bunch of guys in a gentleman's club closing down the disco to make room for another Mozart concert. And there was so much good stuff on BBC Three, and even when it was on air, I don't think they really knew what they had, because Pooling, which was a sitcom with Sharon Horgan before she went on to do Catastrophe and things like that was absolutely brilliant and totally outrageous, and it was nominated for Best Sitcom in the BAFTAs, and it won some sort of other award.
Well, it wouldn't have won that because Ant and Dec would have won that for, you know, Britain's favourite takeaway or some other shite like that, you know.
But then in the same year, BBC Three cancelled the series.
You know, BBC Three's gone. I mean, what next? BBC Four, that's got to go as well, hasn't it?
It's online, mate. BBC Three's online.
Yeah, but when was the last time you went online to watch anything on BBC Three?
That could just be my personal demographic.
Well,
I
it
don't
could
think
also be mine, but it's a similar argument about the Independent newspaper. Now, I used to buy that occasionally, and it was okay. I have looked at it a couple of times, but the website is appalling. I don't know if you've ever tried using it.
Well, that's because the website's appalling, and it's worse than the Daily Mail for jumping
Ads.
up and down with flashing up ads and videos and stuff. But I do read all my news online, so why don't I watch my comedy online? It's just habit.
Yeah, I guess. It's a pity, this whole thing, that's hiding stuff away on BBC Two and the like of it, because you're never going to get any market on those. You know, if people are watching telly, it's normally BBC One or ITV, let's be frank.
There's two things here, right? One is, why are these things kind of tucked away, and they might be more accepted in terms of their so-called offensiveness. But the other thing is, it's very hard to copy the style. Always remember, like, there are people who've tried to copy Jerry Sadowitz, and as he knows, I think he said something like he's very sorry he ever took it up, and that he's given some very nasty people a good living by letting them copy him.
Which doesn't sound bitter at all.
Well, he is a bitter man, isn't he?
Yeah.
That's part of the point. But it reminds me a bit of Viz, where people tried to copy Viz when it came out, and other magazines like Zit came out, but they didn't get it. Again, it's self-awareness, isn't it? Like, Viz could do the thieving gypsy bastards, not because just they were Viz, but because Viz knew how to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. But all
No
these things,
one else could.
all these things have imitators. It's like when Stock Aitken and Waterman found their 120 beat per minute sort of like Euro trash disco beats.
Hey, Stock Aitken Water better than that, mate. Better than Eurotrash.
Yeah, Roadblock.
Yeah, but also Mel and Kim.
Yeah, I
They
liked
were
Mel and
good.
Kim. Kylie Minogue, obviously, Rick Astley, Sunita.
Some of those were okay, yeah.
Classics.
But anyway, what I was going to say is, like, is it a case that the sort of PC baiting has just become a bit boring? As I said, I enjoyed the Frankie Boyle show, and then about halfway through I started feeling it was a bit predictable, you know? The only thing recently in that style which was on BBC One was when Alan Partridge had his Irish lookalike on and managed to somehow get away with singing
Come out, you black and tans.
and the Men Behind the Wire on primetime BBC. Now that is outrageous. I couldn't quite, it took me a while to recover from that. Although younger listeners may not know what the hell we're talking about, but screw them.
I'm sure most people had no clue. Maybe they did think it was just traditional Irish songs.
Yeah, some nice Irish folk music, yeah.
But the Dubliners or somebody, you know.
So I'll give BBC One that, you know, although they also have some right rubbish on there, don't they? Like Mrs. Brown's Boys and things.
I mean, this is extraordinary. That is a top polling award-winning show, and it has people of a certain age especially rolling in the aisles, and for me, I can't see anything funny about it.
But I don't get it at all. I was around my mum
I mean, that could have been out in the 70s.
No, it couldn't, because they wouldn't have got away with all the sort of pseudo-swearing. But I was around my mum and dad, and my mum says to me, like, have you seen this programme? And I went, well, I've only seen bits. So I said, it's absolutely filthy. Wait till you see it. And then she switched it on and sat all the way through it.
Roaring with laughter.
No, being annoyed.
That's
Being
brilliant.
disgusted. She still clocked up a viewing figure, though.
Yeah. Well, I do like the idea of sitting through a whole comedy programme hating it.
The idea was that people like Sadowitz and Boyle are moving comedy forward, taboo busting, and I mean, it's hardly a new thing. I mean, Lenny Bruce did it, didn't he? But
Yeah.
it has moved forward in a way, because at least it's a bit faster than it used to be. I mean, you get these sort of repeats of things like On the Buses and The Good Life. I tell you, mate, you know, never mind the sort of crass kind of sexism and stuff you get in them, but you know, the jokes are like the buses, isn't it? They're like, you can see them coming at the end of the road and you can count down. They should have one of those bus countdown type joke coming in 3 minutes. Joke 4, 7 minutes. It's so slow. The only one from that era that actually was quick was Fawlty Towers. When you think about it.
It's become
Gave you
almost
a bit of snappy.
But you can't even criticise things like this anymore because they become national treasures. Like Morecambe and Wise, at the best of times, I didn't think was funny.
Oh, I liked Morecambe and Wise at times.
Because you were a kid, probably.
How the hell have we got onto Morecambe and Wise?
From Fawlty Towers being a national treasure.
Yeah, but from Frankie Boyle. I mean, Morecambe and Wise, yeah, the thing is, like, they had these shows that were about an hour long, didn't they? And they had 2 or 3 funny bits, and the rest of it was kind
dire.
of just bad variety. And as for their other sort of lesser light imitators, like two Ronnies and Cannon and Ball and all that. No way. Well, what I was going to say about Faulty Towers is, when you look at it now, it's very interesting. It's what was perceived as outrageous at the time actually is like a sort of, it's almost like a Brexity sitcom, isn't it?
Well, I think if they brought back Faulty Towers now and played it, there'd be a large proportion of the country thinking it was a Brexit documentary.
Well, it's like you can almost see Farage as a sort of Basil type character, except instead of being snobby about liking the upper classes, it's like the modern equivalent has been snobby about dodgy businessmen and making a few bob.
We are massively sidetracking. What makes me laugh about Farage is that he's a city boy posing as this sort of like bloke down the pub with a fag and a pint, appealing to a load of lunatics who complain about immigrants and probably have never even seen one.
Well, yeah, Kent's overrun by immigrants. No, it's not. Oh, one thing I did notice about Frankie Boyle, which they had a little segment where they showed a very funny video of an animal rights guy rescuing a pig,
Yeah.
which was pretty good, because he did say, he said, I got to the pig farm, there's hundreds of pigs all crammed in, an absolutely appalling scenario, and he went, I realised I couldn't carry them all, so I just took one. Like, that just shows a lack of thinking ahead.
Yeah.
But did you notice that Boyle said, I like watching pig videos? He said that in all innocence, like he obviously likes to watch, like some people like cat videos. He then said that when he Googles pig videos, he gets penetrative gay sex and a Korean boy band. And he seemed to be a bit, bemused by that. But that's complete bollocks. I Googled pig videos on 2 different browsers, and it came up with Peppa Pig.
Okay. Were you disappointed that it wasn't gay penetrative sex? Is that what you were looking for, Robin?
What I mean is, it was just a load of bollocks. He just made it up. Unless he's got some extra word he puts in. I couldn't find any Korean boy band called Pig or PIG or anything. And the other videos were like about animal cruelty. I'm even going to look up Korean pig video now, and it just says Korean braised pig's trotters recipe, Korean black pig barbecue. They're not worried about animal rights in Korea, are they?
Well, maybe it was one of his writers who stuck that in.
Exactly, because here's another thing, and did we discuss this already, though?
No. We discussed it. We discussed it when we were reviewing some terrible show, which actually had a load.
Oh, the Icons.
The Icons,
no,
yeah.
No, not the Icons. The Brit Awards.
Yeah, that was it. The Brit Awards, which was.
We've reviewed so many awful shows. We don't know what anymore, do we? Yes, talking about Jerry Sadowitz being prescient with his Savile analysis in 1987. He also, in an interview I read, said that Frankie Boyle will write a joke, or someone will write it for him and give it to him, which is a very withering thing to say. And I thought, that can't be right. I'm sure Boyle writes all his own material. Then, when I looked at the credits...
Well, it says written and presented by Frankie Boyle.
In big letters first, right? And then it says the guests. And then it says writers. And on the best of, there was 14. And in a normal episode, just one of the normal of the series, 10 writers.
Well, I don't really have a huge problem with this, Robin. It was like when we were talking, reviewing Word is Bond, about rapping, the purity of lyricism and whether it should be all yours or not.
Yeah, but it's passing off into it. That's the downside of it.
Yeah, possibly.
It reminds me of something that happened years and years ago when 2 people I know who are comedy writers were sitting in the pub with me and a mate, and my mate was he was working in a printer shop, right? Yeah. And he said there was some building going on, and he made a sort of wry comment about how virtually every single one of the builders kept sidling up to him and asking how you get to be a printer. And this was obviously what they saw. They obviously, the bottom rung scaffolding, quite literally. The next rung is building, and they saw printer as the next way up the social scale.
Yeah, easy money as well.
Yeah, well, it was in those days. So he's telling this story in the pub, and 2 comedy writers are sort of listening along. They at the time were ghostwriting a column for a well-known comedian in a Sunday newspaper. I'm not putting any names to this, right? But so we've got this third-hand information. So next week, the well-known comedian's column appears, or a couple of weeks later, and bugger me if there isn't an anecdote in it about how he used to work in a print shop and these builders used to sidle up to him. And I thought, This is all passed off as the sort of work of a nationally famous comedian.
Yeah.
And yet it came from our conversation in a pub. And it's a bit like that, you're thinking Frankie Boyle thinks all this and does all this, and then you realise, well, look, we don't really know how much those people wrote, but given that half the show is clips and the guest talking, it's only 15 minutes worth of Boyle material in there, isn't there?
Do you feel cheated?
Slightly, yeah, because I don't think Jerry Sadowitz has got 10 people writing his comedy, and he can do magic tricks as well.
Well, I don't think you'd get 10 people as mad as him to write his stuff.
No, they couldn't. That's what I mean about the whole Viz thing. You can only do it if you can do it, and if you're aware of why you're doing it and what you're doing. And Frankie Boyle is kind of on the cusp of that, I think.
Well, see, I really enjoyed it, and I haven't sort of like consumed a lot of Frankie Boyle comedy, but I'd be watching it more regularly after this. I thought it was pretty sharp and funny, to be honest.
Yes, well, I watch it more regularly. Shame the series is finished, though, isn't it? On which note, we should probably say it's a shame the podcast is finished.
At 11:25, time check.
Time is now 11:25. We're going to do more of these time checks.
You didn't get that one. See, you've let a whole podcast go and you've only time checked at the beginning.
We'll put more in now that we've got the hang of it.
It's tricky.
It'll be good in the middle.
It would be good in the middle.
So yeah, and on that pseudo-comedic note, we'll go away and get our team of writers to work on next week's episode.
Yeah, make it better.
It'll be something completely different, hopefully.
Absolutely.
And we've got to say thanks for listening.
Yep, thanks for listening and catch you next time, hopefully.
Good night and goodbye. Good morning and goodbye.
At 11:26.
Yeah.
Time check.
Bye.
Cheers.